The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, has specified a curriculum for its 10-hour training for general industry that is designed to provide an overview of the hazards a worker may encounter in the workplace and how these hazards may be recognized and controlled. The topic of this program is Ergonomics, which is one of OSHA's approved electives that may be included as part of the 10-hour training curriculum.
Ergonomics can be best described as fitting the job to the worker, rather than forcing the worker to physically fit the job. The idea is to recognize that workers come in different shapes and sizes. Therefore, there is no standard workstation setup or job site configuration that will provide a good fit for everyone.
When it comes to ergonomics, when we talk about creating a good fit, we are referring to a worker's posture and body mechanics relative to the human body's natural or neutral position of the spine, neck, shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, and ankles.
In other words, each of our joints, as well as our spine, have a natural posture, position, or range of motion that allows work to be performed in a strong, stable, and safe manner. One important aspect of ergonomics is using workstation design and engineering controls to ensure a worker can perform his or her required job tasks with good posture and safe movements.
Of course, preventing workers from experiencing ergonomic-related injuries or musculoskeletal disorders is the goal of any ergonomics program. The number of workplace musculoskeletal disorders has increased dramatically over the past decade.
Referred to as MSDs for short, musculoskeletal disorders account for 1/3 of all lost time work-related injuries and are a contributing factor in 30% of all money spent on workers' compensation claims.
The annual abundance of these types of ergonomic injuries is why OSHA has included ergonomics as an approved topic for inclusion in its 10-hour training for general industry. Musculoskeletal disorders have a variety of contributing factors, also known as ergonomic risk factors or ergonomic hazards.
In addition to posture and body mechanics, ergonomic risk factors include excessive repetition of body movements, exerting too much force, prolonged exposure to vibration or contact stress, and working in cold temperatures.
Common musculoskeletal disorders include strains and sprains, as well as issues related to nerves, tendons, cartilage, and muscles, collectively referred to as soft tissues.
Not surprisingly, the areas of the body most often impacted by ergonomic-related issues involve the arms and back.
The occurrence of work-related musculoskeletal disorders, MSDs, is a well-recognized safety and health issue. OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, currently has no published general industry standard on ergonomics. However, OSHA has issued very specific guidance for certain high-risk industries, including retail grocery stores, shipyards, nursing homes, foundries, beverage distribution, poultry processing, and meatpacking plants. And while OSHA's guidance on ergonomics is not enforceable per se, OSHA's General Duty Clause exists for exactly this type of recognized hazard. Found in Section 5A1, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the General Duty Clause requires employers to provide their employees with a place of employment that is free from recognized hazards that are causing or are likely to cause death or serious physical harm.
In deciding whether a general duty citation should be issued with respect to ergonomics, OSHA will review the following factors: whether an ergonomic hazard exists, whether that hazard is recognized, whether the hazard is causing or likely to cause serious physical harm to employees, and whether a feasible means exists to reduce the hazard.
OSHA commonly cites the general duty clause when addressing safety issues for which no specific OSHA standard applies. So, recognizing and controlling ergonomic risk factors to prevent work-related MSDs is not just a good idea for employers. Failing to do so could result in OSHA citations or penalties.
Let's next discuss some common musculoskeletal disorders and learn their warning signs and symptoms.
First, let's make sure that we are speaking the same language. Musculoskeletal disorders, MSDs, are commonly called cumulative stress disorders, repetitive stress injuries, repetitive motion injuries, repeated trauma, occupational overexertion syndrome, or simply soft tissue injuries. Each of these terms refer to the same type of ergonomic-related ailments that adversely impact the spine, joints, and soft tissues of our body. Again, for our purposes and throughout the rest of this program, we will use the term MSD. Carpal tunnel syndrome, tennis and golfer's elbow, tendinitis, trigger finger, Raynaud's syndrome, and sciatica are common MSDs with which you may be familiar.
Carpal tunnel syndrome affects the median nerve of the carpal tunnel in the wrist. The carpal tunnel is an actual tunnel through which the median nerve travels into the wrist, hand, palm, and fingers to allow free movement. The structure of the carpal tunnel consists of bone, tendons, and tissue. Various risk factors, health effects, or trauma may cause the carpal tunnel to swell, placing pressure on the median nerve, leading to severe pain, tingling sensations, or numbness in the hand or fingers.
Tennis elbow and golfer's elbow both impact the tendons of the forearm, albeit in different areas.
The forearm tendons serve to attach the forearm muscles to the elbow bone. These tendons work while gripping, lifting, and twisting objects.
These tendons can become weakened and/or inflamed from risk factors such as overuse, strain, vibration, or trauma, resulting in sharp pain when opening or closing the fingers and gripping.
If you experience pain when closing the hand into a firm grip, you may have golfer's elbow or medial epicondylitis. If you experience pain when opening your hand or spreading your fingers, you may have tennis elbow or lateral epicondylitis.
Inflammation and pain related to overuse or trauma can be associated with any of our body's tendons and is referred to in general as tendinitis and can be quite painful.
Another example is referred to as trigger finger and occurs when inflammation affects the sheath that surrounds the tendon of an affected finger. This can cause a finger to become stuck or frozen in a curled position. Overuse, strain, vibration, or trauma can be contributing factors.
Raynaud's syndrome is a condition that results in certain extremities, such as the fingers or toes, to feel cold, numb, tingly, or visibly change in color.
There are several medical-related contributors to Raynaud's syndrome. However, long exposure to vibration, cold temperatures, or continuous repetitive movements may be contributing factors.
The term sciatica is often used to describe a shooting pain that emanates from the lower back area and travels down one side of the body or the other.
Technically, this term only applies to the sciatic nerve, which is the longest and thickest nerve in the body. The sciatic nerve runs from the lower back through the hips, buttocks, and leg. Injury, inflammation, or compression can result in severe shooting nerve pain that travels along the nerve's pathway.
There are many nerves that travel through our spinal cord and exit between each vertebra.
Persons who are overweight, have weak core muscles, practice poor posture, or lift improperly are more likely to strain, injure, or weaken the structures around these nerves, resulting in painful inflammation or compression between bony structures.
This type of nerve pain brought on by musculoskeletal disorders of the lower back is a leading cause of lost time injuries and workers' compensation claims. Here are some common signs and symptoms that may indicate the onset of an MSD. Pain, weakness, or numbness, burning, tingling, or a loss of skin color, loss of muscle control, a feeling of heaviness or clumsiness, restrictive movement or frozen joints, and curled fingers or toes.
These types of symptoms may occur suddenly or acutely after a severe trauma or extended exposure to a risk factor.
However, more commonly, these symptoms occur gradually over a longer period of time due to chronic exposure to ergonomic risk factors such as poor posture, improper lifting, or overuse. Keep in mind that exposures to ergonomic risk factors occur both on the job and off. Again, common ergonomic risk factors that contribute to MSDs include excessive repetition of body movements, awkward or unchanging postures, exerting too much force, excessive exposure to vibration, contact stress, and cold temperatures.
The possibility of developing an MSD is affected by the duration of exposure to a risk factor, the frequency of exposure to a risk factor, and the magnitude or intensity of the risk factor to which a person is exposed.
Keep in mind that many MSDs result from a combination of more than one risk factor. The takeaway here is that both you and your employer should do everything possible to reduce exposure to ergonomic risk factors in the workplace, and everyone should strive to follow good ergonomic practices away from work.
In the workplace, the process of identifying ergonomic hazards and implementing risk control solutions is commonly referred to as the ergonomic process.
OSHA has provided guidance on the elements that an effective ergonomic process should include, starting with management support.
Management should define clear goals and objectives related to ergonomics and discuss them with employees. Management should directly involve employees in worksite assessments, solution development, and abatement strategies.
The ergonomic process must also include methods to identify ergonomic problems. Identifying existing and potential ergonomic problems requires a periodic review of the facility, its various workstation designs, the work practices of employees, and the overall production process.
One valuable resource is the company's OSHA 300 injury and illness logs, workers' compensation records, and worker reports of problems.
Of course, examining past injury records is a reactive approach to identifying hazards and must be combined with more proactive methods to discover ergonomic hazards that have thus far gone undetected. One effective proactive method is observing the workplace and job tasks in an effort to recognize any of the following risk factors.
Exerting excessive force. Look for people struggling to lift heavy objects or people pushing or pulling very heavy loads. Also look for people manually pouring heavy liquids or straining to manipulate tools or other items. Performing repetitive tasks. Notice if workers are performing the same motion or series of motions continually or frequently for an extended period of time. Working in awkward postures or being in the same posture for long periods of time. Recognize if employees are frequently using positions that place stress on the body, such as prolonged or repetitive reaching above shoulder height, kneeling, or squatting. Also, look out for improper bending or lifting motions, using tools with wrists bent, or twisting the torso while lifting. Contact stress. Contact stress occurs when body parts are pressed for long periods against hard or sharp edges. Vibration. Look for people exposed to vibration while working. Whole body vibration, as well as hand and arm vibration, are common contributors to MSDs. And cold temperatures. Workers who are exposed to cold while also exposed to other risk factors is a potential ergonomic hazard. Cold tends to increase the risk for an MSD to develop. For example, the meatpacking and poultry processing industries commonly combine repetitive movements with cold exposure.
In addition to observing job function, observing worker behavior can also be used to identify potential ergonomic hazards.
Workers who frequently shake their arms and wrists, roll their shoulders, or stretch to relieve back pain may be showing symptoms of exposure to ergonomic risk factors.
Of course, an effective ergonomic process must include the input of employees.
Employees can provide first-hand information about the potential ergonomic hazards presented by the jobs they perform.
And finally, employees should be encouraged to report any symptoms of MSDs as early as possible.
Early reporting provides the best opportunity to correct a problem before a more serious issue arises.
Once the ergonomic process has been used to identify ergonomic risk factors in the workplace, the next step is to implement solutions to control hazards. OSHA and many professional safety organizations recommend following a specific hierarchy of controls when addressing hazards, and hazard elimination is always the first choice.
For example, certain tasks with inherent ergonomic hazards can be eliminated by eliminating the need for a person to perform the task in the first place. Bending and stooping to perform manual filing can be eliminated by digitized record keeping. Manual material handling can be eliminated by palletizing loads and utilizing material handling equipment.
Using engineering controls to eliminate or reduce the hazard is the next choice.
Engineering controls focus on modifying job tasks, workstations, tools, and processes, taking into account the physical capabilities and limitations of workers. For example, bending awkwardly to reach parts stored in a floor-based bin can be ergonomically improved by elevating and tilting the bin for improved access. Poor posture due to the location of a monitor can be remedied by placing the monitor on an adjustable mount.
Next in the hierarchy of controls are administrative controls, sometimes called work practice controls. Administrative controls are policies and practices introduced by management. These controls are often aimed at reducing the length of exposure and/or the frequency of exposure to ergonomic risk factors. For example, mandating a specific frequency of breaks for employees engaged in repetitive tasks or implementing frequent job rotations relieves workers from continuous exposure to repetitive motions. Work practice controls also include training employees to perform their work while maintaining good posture and utilizing ergonomically safe movements and body mechanics. Because ergonomics is so dependent on the movement and position of the body, employees consistently following their training is key to the effectiveness of the overall ergonomic program. The final hazard control method is the use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. PPE is always the last choice and is typically the least effective means of controlling hazards.
Examples of PPE intended to control ergonomic hazards include gloves that reduce vibration from tools and knee pads used while kneeling to reduce contact stress on the knee.
As we discussed earlier, employee training is a key aspect of the overall ergonomic process, and teaching employees the neutral position of each joint is an important part of learning to work safely.
The neutral position of the wrist is the position where the wrist is in straight alignment with the forearm. This is sometimes called the handshake position and remains neutral even when rotated palm down, pronation, or palm up, supination. When work is performed, the wrist should remain within a few degrees of its neutral position. Do not perform work with the wrist near its limit of flexion or extension. In addition, when gripping tools or handles, do not use excessive grip strength. Use just enough to maintain control. To maintain a neutral position of the arms and shoulders, keep the upper arms near your side and the elbow joints near 90 degrees. Strive to make this your normal working position. Positions to avoid include working with your arms outstretched and elbows locked, working with your arms overhead, or constantly having to reach behind you.
These positions place a lot of stress on the body, and you should seek to minimize their occurrence.
The neutral posture of the head and neck occurs when the head is level and centered over the shoulders while looking forward. Workstations should be configured to allow this posture to be easily achievable. Avoid prolonged periods of time spent looking down or looking up. This places undue strain on the neck. Similarly, the spine has a neutral position that occurs when standing erect with the head and shoulders also in their neutral position. This position maintains the spine's natural S-shaped curve. This natural S-shape of the spine should be maintained while kneeling, sitting, standing, and of course lifting and carrying loads. Bending forward at the waist is called flexion and places considerable strain on the lower back.
Lifting from this weak bent-over position is extremely harmful to the delicate structures of the lower back and is the root cause of many MSDs.
Sitting for prolonged periods with poor posture can also be harmful to the back and is a leading cause of MSDs experienced by office workers.
Let's now examine the arrangement of some various workstations and, in the process, learn some additional ergonomic principles.
A seated worker should have their feet flat on the floor or on a footrest with their knees bent at a 90-degree angle and their thighs roughly parallel to the floor. To achieve this, the height of the chair must be raised or lowered as needed. A chair should provide lumbar support and allow the user to maintain good spinal posture while sitting. The height of the working surface and/or the arm support of the chair should allow elbows to remain near the body and bent between 90 and 120 degrees. The wrists should remain in their neutral position, in alignment with the forearms. For standing workers, workstation height is also critical. Adjust the height of the working surface to allow for a neutral elbow, wrist, and spine. If a computer monitor is used, it should be positioned approximately arm's length away. The top of the monitor should be at or slightly below eye level.
A workstation should be arranged to avoid constant reaching. Items that you plan to use continuously, such as a mouse and keyboard or critical tools, should be located within a small area that you can easily reach while your elbows remain near your side. Important items used less frequently should be reachable simply by extending your arms, but without leaning or bending at the waist. Other items that are used infrequently should be stored further away, but are reachable by briefly leaning, bending, or standing up.
Regardless of workstation setup, it's important to periodically change positions or take a short break from time to time. Standing for long periods of time is both stressful and fatiguing to your back and the rest of your body. If you must stand for extended periods, use anti-fatigue mats to absorb the stress of standing on a hard surface. Also, using a footrest and switching your feet periodically can make standing work more comfortable.
Lifting and carrying loads is a common activity with the potential to present ergonomic hazards. This is why safe lifting is such an important part of every safety and health program.
It's important to maintain the spine's natural S-shaped curve when lifting and carrying loads. This naturally strong and stable spine position is also referred to as the spine's neutral posture. To achieve this, it's important to bend your knees as you lower yourself to the load, rather than bending over at the waist. Taking a stance slightly wider than shoulder width also helps reach the load without bending at the waist. After taking a firm grip on the load, Make sure to keep your head up and your shoulders back, which helps keep the spine in its neutral posture. Make sure to place the load as close to you as possible. Then, rise straight up using the strength of your legs to lift rather than your back. Keeping the load close to your body when lifting, carrying, or lowering is an important ergonomic principle that should always be followed.
Anytime a load is extended away from the body, the leverage created places a large amount of force on the lower back.
One of the ergonomic problems presented by manual material handling is overcoming situations where reaching the load without harmful bending is challenging. This often requires moving the load to a better position with some type of assist device, redesigning the workstation, or installing some type of engineering controls to provide easier access to the load.
Using the concept of bridging or bracing whenever possible can also reduce strain on your back while lifting.
Bridging and bracing refers to placing your arm, thigh, waist, or other body part onto or against a solid object as a means to reduce the amount of weight being lifted, making it easier to rise with the load and to redirect some of the force away from the lower back and spine. Always avoid twisting at the waist when moving a load. When turning with a load, use your feet to pivot your whole body as one unit rather than twisting your back.
In this program, we have learned the important role that ergonomics plays in preventing work-related musculoskeletal disorders.
We have shown how fitting the job to the person allows each unique worker to perform tasks while maintaining safe postures and body positions. We have learned about the ergonomic process and how to identify the ergonomic risk factors that must be controlled to prevent the occurrence of musculoskeletal disorders. We provided examples of common MSDs and explained the signs and symptoms that indicate an ergonomic issue may exist. And finally, we provided some guidance on workstation setup and body position while working to ensure the body's joints and spine are not placed in awkward or damaging positions.
By including ergonomics as part of its 10-hour training curriculum, OSHA recognizes the important role that ergonomics plays in workplace safety, and so should you. Take the important information that you have learned in this program and use it to keep yourself and your coworkers safe, healthy, and injury-free.